Now, this will only take 30 seconds, and I feel I gotta say it. Thank you to the charter members who had the foresight. Oh, unaccustomed. I told you that I was unaccustomed. Thank you to the charter members who had foresight to know the society was not only good, but necessary to save our heritage. Thank you for the 11 members who have stuck through the growth and expansion to the present day. And a special thank you to all of you who joined in membership the past few years to help us make NHS a wonderful society with a wonderful goal. At present, I wish to thank Esther for chairing tonight's event. I knew she would do an excellent job. That's why I asked her. Also, her committee. Thank you, recognition. Also, her committee, Mike and Ginny George, John Kagerbein, Mike and Ginny George, John Kagerbein, Eunice Birdhorn, and Miller Young, and John Eckerson. A super group of people. To close, thank you all for coming to make this first birthday party a success. As the NHS approaches middle age, we have shown that this society is alive and will prosper. Happy 35th, NHS. The latest membership count is, now listen to this, 471. Isn't that great? We will certainly go for our 500 goal. I want you to help me get there now. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome.
At this time, I would like to make a presentation to one of our members who doesn't happen to be here this evening, but this is, and I'll read it to you, James Stapleton, the citizens of Akron, the members of the Newstead Historical Society, acknowledge your dedication and labor in restoring. He's here. Where is he? Oh, I didn't see Jim. Bifocals anyway. I'm going to give this to Katie, and she can take it back to her dad. It is with pride that we see this beautiful home becoming such a prize in our community, July 22, 1993. There we are, Jim. Thank you. Nobody will ever work as long and as hard as Jim has done on our beautiful building. I do have some thank yous that I might make that may have been overlooked. I'm not sure. Lucille may have done it. The Akron Greenhouse, Dottie Freeman, Millie and Kim Bird, Dave Wakeman, and the others who have gathered the artifacts and how they carried that dolphin up the stairs and more than I know. I couldn't lift it, and I'm pretty tough. I couldn't pick it up. And the committee has been mentioned, Eunice Birdhorn, Mike and Ginny, John Kagerbein, Esther Perry. I think probably, I don't know what the progress has been made on the dessert. Has everybody had dessert? A piece of our birthday cake? I hope so. I would thank you for your attention during this evening's meeting and ask you to please take a look at the artifacts if you haven't seen them and socialize as much as you want to. And please do have a safe journey home this evening. Oh, Dave. Dave has some comments to make on artifacts at this time.
Running the mic?
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't go very far, much farther than this. Yeah, you'll be fine.
Thank you. I work with the acquisition committee now, and when Esther called me and asked to get some items out for this evening, I was didn't know what to get, because we got enough that would probably fill this room. And I asked her if she would care to have one of the chairs up here. Now, I don't know if you've all seen it yet, but it's sitting back here at the table. It used to be in a park. I never remember seeing him in a park myself, because I've only lived in Akron since '75. But I'm sure there's a lot of people here that has, who can tell you a lot more about him than I can. Several years ago, received a call, do we want him? Of course I said yes. And up to that time, a lot of people, I guess, had figured it was completely gone. Neptune, I've seen pictures of it, is in the mid, used to be in the middle of the fountain with the 4 chairs on the outside. We have 2 of the chairs. This one that's here is the best one. Last Tuesday night, myself and another fellow went down to the old power plant, go to Main Street, and got it on a truck. I took it home, he helped unload it, and that was Monday night. Tuesday night, he helped unload it. Tuesday night, I pushed it out in the yard on a cart, because to look at it from Tuesday night to now, you would never know that it was the same thing. As they say, these here have been sitting out in a garden and in a garage probably for the last 20, 30, 40 years, I don't know. But it was completely covered with dirt and rust. Behind his leg, he sat there with a bandage, was full of dirt. The bottom was, and where the fig leaf is, had grass and full of dirt. So I hosed it off, looked pretty gross. But tonight, I think he looked pretty sharp. From a distance, he looked great. But it didn't come out too clean, so I got some spray 9 out, sprayed it down, hosed it off, got a rag out, scrubbed it. It still looked pretty bad in the crevices. So I went and got a paintbrush and did his hair and behind his ears and everything else that I could, and hosed it down again. It looks A-okay. As they say, we're very fortunate to have these 2. I'm going to ask Bob Scheid. He probably knows the lady that we got these from. I can't think of her name. We got them on Brooklyn Street. Pinky was her first name. Do you know? Bob? Okay. King was the last name, correct? Wilson. It was Larry Wilson's sister?
Yeah.
Okay, is who we got it from. Mrs. King. And we've had them now probably 6 or 8 years, but most people probably had never seen them. I know I never had. And I know Nancy and Jim doesn't want it setting up here, but
But they do.
well, maybe for a little while. But I think as long as we got the thing cleaned up, I think it should be on display for a while. I was going to stop up, talk to Pete Gray back up at East Hill Foundation. They have different displays in their window, and it'd be worthwhile to have it for the people of the community to see. As I say, we're very lucky to have these, and there's something that should be preserved someplace, somewhere, somehow. This is the best one of the 2. The other one has a broken base crack. This one here is missing a finger. The other one has all the fingers, but this is the best. I have several photo albums here of a lot of old pictures, from steam tractors putting in Main Street to articles. One album has all headings, I believe says Akron on it, from canceled checks to old banks, store, advertising. I was trying to think anything that says Akron would be a good, or Newstead would be a good display. But that's all I have to say. If anybody has any questions, I'll be around here. John?
Thanks, Dave. So to repeat now what Dave said, do look at these things up at this table if you haven't had a chance. And we thank each and every one for coming to celebrate our big birthday party. With that, I will formally close the festivities for this evening. Thank you. There's a request to have pictures of all the charter members. So, Kenny, Where would you like the charter members to stand?
Right by the cherub.
Come over here. Up by the cherub.
Get the mic. Get the mic. What did they do? Get Jim. Get Mike.
Would all the charter members still on? Would all the charter members come up to this corner where the cherub is and get assembled? We'd like to get a picture for the newspaper. All the charter members that are present tonight, come on up and gather around the cherub there, and Kenny will take a picture. Thank you.
Wife, unfortunately, at this time, he was madly in love with me. And this became a very popular song, the music, and it really was played by all the ladies in the country.
I'm going to go over here next to the musician. Help.
Sing away, and then chorus after verse 1.
Thank you, Kim and Millie, very much. The song that I sang was done strictly on the cuff. That's what I was informed when I wore a short sleeve shirt. That's why there's a discrepancy in there. Yeah. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our former president, Ellsworth Brown, right over here at this table. Come up here all the way from the southern tier with Mrs. Brown. Also, Dave Wakeman. I don't know where these people are sitting. I haven't. Right behind the podium. Dave Wakeman. David is responsible for gilding the wooden wall on top of our new Grant Club the other day. You should know that, I think. We're about to have dessert, but I think in the need to save a bit of time, I might give you some remarks while dessert is being served. Incidentally, can you hear me in the corner over there? Usually I can work without a microphone. I've been known to scorch the paint off the high school halls from one end to the other. So I thought, I was asked to give the history of Akron, and I thought, gee, that can be long, that might be dull, but I did tear through a few sources in the last week or so, picking out a few dates, and I used as my sources the Centennial book from 1949, the Quasquicentennial book, which was 125 years after our founding. Incidentally, there are many of those left. I think there's some up the bag and barrel. We discovered them under a desk in one of the offices in the village hall and left there since 1974. They are for sale. If you've lost yours, you might want to get another one. Also, I gleaned something from notes written by Delahake on the history of Newstead and some of Elijah Knight's recollections of the early days in our settlement. So I picked out a few dates here, and I'm going to add a few of my little ad-libs to it. So it's not what you call an extremely scholarly approach. But here it is. In 1798, there was an Indian trail that came down through Russell Park and down across the bridge near the bridge, the present bridge on Buell Street, and went up toward Route 5. And in some of my reading, I read that that trail was so well traveled by foot by the Indians and the early settlers that for years it was able to be seen, a depression in the ground where the trail was made. Then in 1801, Peter Van Deventer, a good Dutchman, bought 4 lots and began the settlement up near Route 5. In 1803, they had the first election for mayor, and you recall from Kelsey Webster's history that he's done before, there were so many men trying to get in the log cabin to vote that they had to do it outside. So they lined up the people for Van Deventer on one side of the fence and the people for his opposition on the other. There were 144 men who voted. Doesn't say a thing about the women. That's changed, isn't it? Anyway, Van Deventer got to be the mayor. In 1811, Isaac Denio came out onto the Buffalo Road, and at about that time, it was discovered that the water power in the village, what we call our village, was so critical and so needed that the settlement began to move from Route 5 down into this territory. In 1826, Jonathan Russell bought Lot 26, which was a large piece of real estate, and there are, I believe, 4 of the oak trees in that park up in Russell Park that were there when Jonathan Russell bought the land. That was all forested area. So sometimes if you want to think back and recollect and really be in awe, stand next to one of those 4 oak trees that are left. And think of the time when those stood there during the American Revolution. In 1831, Akron was named. And you've heard of the story. There were many people who thought it should be named this or that or the other thing, and then Akron was picked and has become our name. I think there are 7 Akrons in the United States. We're the largest. In 1837, a Methodist church was started. Jonathan Russell had the foresight not only to reserve the land for Russell Park, named after him, of course, but he did provide land, lots of land, to build churches of various denominations. And in 1837, the Methodist Church was started. In 1839, Colonel Delano, who had just come from a successful battle in the War of 1812, at Sackett's Harbor up on Lake Ontario, came into Akron when he was a young fellow. And he was walking around in Falkirk, the story goes, and discovered a piece of rock which for some reason he must have suspected or known was a type that could have been made into cement. So the story goes that he burned this thing in an oven, burned this rock that he had, until it became white. Then he smashed it all up with a hammer, and then in part of his test he added water to it, discovered that it would revert back to the solid mass. And then he started up in Falkirk, bought some land up there, leased it, I believe, and started a small kiln, and he made, in his first year, about 2,300-pound barrels of cement, which is quite good, I would think, for those old days and the inefficient methods of doing things. That was the beginning of the cement industry in Akron, which I think, if I live long enough, I'd like to write a story on, because it has been such a big thing in our village. Incidentally, the Delanos are having a reunion this summer, and they're going to honor Colonel Delano, whose grave is right up next to the sidewalk on Maple Lawn, right across from the town hall. In 1849, the Octagon House was built by C.B. Rich. His wife was supposed to be the lucky recipient of the house. She didn't like it, I have been told. And so he had to build another one. And he built the house where Jimmy Campbell lives now. Formerly Harry Martin's family lived in it. My father remembers seeing old C.B. Rich mowing his lawn with a Pennsylvania lawnmower. Those of you who know lawnmowers, old lawnmowers, might appreciate that. Theory is that my mother took piano lessons when she was a little girl from an old lady named Mrs. Rich. Then Mrs. Rich died, and Mr. Rich took a second wife, who was Hannah Elizabeth Delano, the daughter of Colonel Delano. And I think her burial place is over on the Beeman Cemetery on Salt Road. I spent 2 days over there in my hands and knees with a trowel and a whisk broom, and I can't prove a thing except I got my clothes all dirty. The Peanut Railroad was built in 1854. It ran from Canandaigua, I think, all the way to Tonawanda, across the state. My recollection of the Peanut Railroad when I bought my mansion on East Avenue is watching in the wintertime across the gully when that peanut engine was trying to get up the grade to get into Pembroke. And I could remember seeing the coal in the firebox. It was just red hot. They were just storming up there with that old engine. Some of you remember in our centennial celebration riding, I think it was centennial, riding the Peanut Railroad up to Batavia and back. Civil War in 1860 sent many young men into battle, one of whom we have many writings of, the writings of Robert Sherry, who incidentally is buried in Maple Lawn. His stone still stands down there. In 1872, the Grant Club was built. You know the story of that, and how it met its demise after its second replacement was knocked over with a truck. In 1884, another big milestone. You might say, what is he picking on all these trivia for? I think they're interesting. The Park Theater was built by the Stapletons, and we almost lost it 2 weeks ago, as you readily know, but it was saved. In 1890, the big fire on Main Street, and this was an interesting fire. It was put out by knocking one of the buildings down, so the fire had nowhere to go. Also, they got so worried about it, instead of fire trucks coming from Paris Hill and from Mill Grove and so forth with big ladders, they sent a steam pumper with a full head of steam on it, mounted on a flat car, and brought it out with a railroad train from Buffalo. But it got here too late. The fellows had the fire out. In 1924, the new school was built. And I'll tell you this interesting thing about the school. Danny Blash was down in the stairs, down cellar somewhere in one of the storerooms looking around, and he came up to my office with an oak, a beautiful oak file cabinet, single drawer cabinet, little one, and he said there's a name on a brass tag on the bottom, and the name said Frederick Layton, Akron, New York, and he wondered what that meant. Frederick Layton was the principal of the high school from 1904 to 1909. So that box had been kicking around down there from probably 1909. And I'll get it all cleaned up and repaired and give it to the Historical Society. Mr. Layton, incidentally, was the man who was given the job of drawing up the plans for a new school. And he and another man drew the plans up at night. The other fellow sat in a chair and slept, so actually he got paid for nothing, and Frederick Layton did all the work. Well, those are some of the things that interest me a great deal about the history of Akron. There's absolutely tons of material about it, and it's very difficult to, in a short period of time, to give a very detailed description. But there are a great number of pieces that have been written by it, about it rather. So I would recommend that you, if you can't find your material, you buy one of these books left over from 1974 and read up on it again. Very shortly now, we're going to have dessert, and I'm not just sure where we are in this program.
I think you should sing happy birthday.
Oh, who we sing happy birthday to? Newstead Historical
35
Society?
years. Somebody's
35 years.
old.
Very auspicious occasion. Should we sing happy birthday to us? Let's do it.
Historical Society?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Newstead Historical Society. Happy birthday to you. 35 years old.
Let's do the honor.
Oh, thank you.
Now it's official. You had a few people worried about that.
Am I in order to ask if we can have something read for us now entitled How We Got Started? Some notes Della Haig had, and Malcolm Haig, would you come up here and read those notes for us? Or your article that you have. Mac is Della's son, as you all know, and he will make a presentation while we're still working on this case.
Oh, your dad.
We're watching.
Sit around here, man. If you need more light, I'll turn the lights on. Here's the thing, to get right up close to the mic here. Talk right into it.
I don't seem to have the year this was started here. Perhaps Mrs. Weaver would know. Mrs. Jules Rainstein is president of the Erie County Historical Society and Federation of Suffolk. Assistant Mrs. Lee Weaver, president of the Women's Society for the Christian Service of the United Methodist Church of Akron, and Mrs. Charles Haig, program chairman for the organization in organizing the Newstead Historical Society in the year 1957. Mrs. Reinstein was invited by Mrs. Haig to display her collection of old-fashioned quilts and tell the interesting story of the pattern to the ladies of the WSCS. Mrs. Weaver, whose ancestors were among the early settlers in Newstead, and Mrs. Haig had discussed the organizing of a historical be to the town. Knowing of Mrs. Reinstein's intense interest in historical associations, they asked her advice as to how such a society could be organized. She suggested that one of the women invite 5 other women known that would be interested in history of the town to their home and tell them their intentions of forming such a society. Those 5 ladies would then in turn each invite five more to attend an organization meeting at their home. The meeting would then approximately 5 people. It was described to meet in the library of the Akron Central School if available. The account of this meeting on page 11 of this book. Will you please add this account to this? And please copy this over. Apparently this is the beginning here. This account of the organization, the Newstead Historical Society, was written by Mrs. Charles H. in 1971. It was given to me copied as the secretary and recorded this by Mrs. H. Done from Mrs. Lean Weaver. That's it. I have many clippings that my mother's taken out of papers and so forth at home. Also, she wrote the history of the town of Newstead, and that was put in book form by William Grazer, clippings from the papers. And I have just two of the books. Apparently there was 3. Number 2 is missing. And I have those. I brought those along because I was interested in looking at them.
Thank you, Malcolm. I was lucky enough when I was a little kid to live right across the street from Delahaye. Never realized at the time when I was growing up how much of a historian she really was. She was very good. Now I would like to ask Kate Parzak if she would, there she comes, if she would give us a brief history of the Octagon House itself.
Okay, this isn't my favorite thing here, but oh well. Once again, just like the history of Akron, there's so much you can talk about with the history of the Octagon House. So I'll just mention a couple of things while we're here tonight. The Octagon fad took place mid-1800s, 50s and 60s mostly, and it was started by Orson Fowler. He was a phrenologist. At that time, phrenology was a new science and highly regarded. If you don't know the feeling of the bumps, if you had a round head, you were a perfect person, and there are other things that you could touch by that. We kind of scoff at it today, but at the time it was quite a big deal. And Orson Fowler studied it, did lectures and tours, traveled around the country, had quite a business of it, and became a wealthy man because of it. So what he did in turn was decide to settle down and have a little country cottage on the Hudson. And when he was looking through architectural books, decided that he didn't like any of the plans, so he came up with his own. And going with the plan that if you had a round head, you were a perfect person, he felt that if you were in round living quarters, you'd be in perfect living conditions. And therefore, he came up with the octagon design. Also, the octagon eliminated a lot of drafty corners and such. A lot of old homes, I know mine is like this, have a lot of rooms with 3 sides of the room exposed to the outside walls.
not very good for heating purposes and such. With the octagon, it eliminates a lot of that, and he took that as a basis for his design. There were many things that he wanted inside the house to make sure that it was perfect living conditions, and our octagon house has a lot of those. The first floor or basement floor of the house has the receiving room, or kind of the family room of the day, and that's next to the kitchen. Orson felt that food and people go together, indeed they do, so he felt that those should be close together. Also the servants' quarters we have downstairs, close to the front door, so just in case people stop by after hours, the servants would be right there to say hello to them. On the second or main floor of the house, we've got our party floor. Orson Fowler was very much into parties and entertaining, and so was Charles Rich. The dining room is large enough for 2-3 tables if need be, and then a drawing room off of that that's large enough to be made into an impromptu dance room. And up on the third floor, the bedrooms are squared off with little triangular rooms off to the side. Those are used for a dressing area or wash area away from your sleep quarters. Orson felt that that was very important for the time. And the cupola above. Visually, an octagon house just wouldn't be right without that. And Orson said that it was there for people to get away from it all, to look up and out at the view, and our octagon house is 40 feet up. You get a great view, especially in the fall. And it was also used as kind of a sick room. If you weren't feeling well, you could go up there and get fresh air and sunshine. However, by the time you traveled all the stairs up there, you've been to our house, you're going to need a lot of fresh air. But those things were important things, as well as the speaking tube system that's in our house, and also the dumbwaiter to bring the food from downstairs up to the party area. Now, when Charles Rich built the house in 1849, he was honeymooning on the Hudson with his fourth wife, and they probably saw Orson Fowler's octagon house being built and were so taken by it that he decided to build it here. Now, at that time, there was open hearth cooking, 2 coal-burning fireplaces on the main floor, and coal stoves to heat the bedrooms upstairs. Candles and oil lamps would light the area. From 1868 to 1882, Charles J. Clark owned the building. He's also a relative of Clark Twin, the last owner. Charles Clark was superintendent of the Akron Cement Works, and during the time he had the building, from 1879 to 82, he rented that to Uriah Cummings. His son, Homer S. Cummings, became the U.S. Attorney General under FDR and was at one time Democratic National Chairman. Then it was owned, 1882, by William Jones and his wife until 1938. During that time, gas lamps, indoor plumbing were added, but it wasn't until about 1939 or 1940, when Clark Twin and his wife moved in, that electricity was added. Old Mrs. Jones didn't trust that newfangled light source. But now we do have the original plans to the house. We removed all the extra baggage that come out with the advent of indoor plumbing and electricity and such. We do have the 1849 house plan to the area. And I'll just say in closing, what we've got so far here during the summer, we do have 1 room completed. 1 room down, 19 to go. Our servants' quarters are completed. And now we are working on the dining room area, finishing the basics, getting the woodwork and trims and the doorway trims together, also working on the baseboards. We have to remake those. Those were pretty beat up. We're having help with Bob Klein. He's donated some special tools to redo that. And once that gets painted up, we're going into the drawing room and also the other areas of the main floor. So that's this summer's project. And if you haven't been there lately, please stop in because it looks great. Call me up. Wednesdays are good days to take tours, and hope to see you there sometime. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Regarding the Octagon House, I have a letter here given to me by Margaret Blackmore. who resides at Beechwood Residence. And it does pertain to the Octagon House and her recollection of it. Let me read it to you at this time. Dear friends, when I learn of the progress that's taken place in our Octagon House, I'm proud to have had a small part in those early places and plans. Some of us decided many years ago that we should preserve the culture and our heritage, and that's really what the project is about. My first recognition of the Octagon House took place before I was 10 years old. I lived in the country on South Newstead Road, but came into town for piano lessons from Nellie Tinkham, who lived on the corner of Main and Townsend. Each week I looked at, in quotes, the house, and wondered how any house could be built that was not square. I could not imagine but how the rooms would be shaped, and always I'd hoped that someday I could tour the house. I loved to read and thought about how great it would be to sit in the cupola and read and survey the world from that vantage point and dream. It's a good thing that has been accomplished through many plans, hours of hard work, and much money. I commend the Newstead Historical Society for its enthusiasm and purpose. May it continue. I wish you the very best. Sincerely, Margaret Blackmore. I'd like to call on Bev Summey, who will read for us the minutes of the first Historical Society meeting.
February 13th, 1958. A meeting was held in the high school library, February 13th at 8 o'clock, for those interested in forming a historical club in Akron.
Need more light?
Yes, I do.
Can we get more light, please?
There were 21 present. Lucille Weaver acted as temporary chairman. Newstead Historical Society was the name voted on by the group. A constitution was presented, discussed, and accepted. Officers for the year were voted as follows. President, Kelsey Webster. Vice President, Gladys Brown. Recording Secretary, Mildred Roselle. Corresponding Secretary, Marjorie Path. Treasurer, Esther Perry. The Vice President will have the responsibility of planning and being in charge of all monthly programs. It was noted to have 6 meetings per year beginning in January. I can't read this. An alternate month, January, March, May, July, September, and November. Meetings will be held the first Thursday of the month. The next meeting to be March 6th at the home at the library. Officers are to be elected in November. Dues of $1 are due at this time for the following year. Gladys Brown had an informative display of old maps, deeds, pictures, atlases, and antiques. She used the opaque projector to show old scenes of Akron. These were discussed and identified. Mildred Roselle, recording secretary.
Thank you, Dave. Among the acknowledgments that I would like to make are the fact that we are fortunate in having probably our oldest member with us, Grace Byers, sitting right across from Ellsworth Brown. And I think you should know, Grace, that your chauffeur is supposed to take home the centerpiece, which was donated to our meeting by the Akron Greenhouses. Now, it was here on the corner. Oh, it's on the piano. I'm afraid somebody's eating it. So that, Grace, that's for you. At the end of the meeting, and we're not quite there yet, of course, there are artifacts to be discussed by Dave Wakeman. There are many things that are over on these tables that you may want to look at before you go home. At this time, however, I would like to call on President Lucille Weaver to present some certificates to members of this group. Lucille?
Before I present these certificates,
You want this, Lucille, to speak to you?
do I need this?
Yes.
I would like to read to you. Gotta hold it up here. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. I would like to read to you the charter members of the society in 1958 as of February. All of them. Imogene Anderson, Ethel Bishop, Margaret Blackmore, Ellsworth Brown, Gladys Brown, Arthur Bird, Ruth Bird, Grace Byers, Frank Columbus, Esther Dye, Henry Dye, Ethel Finch, Leon Finch, Mina Foster, May Gilling, Charles Haig, Stella Haig, Fern Hart, Maud Hunt, Roscoe Hunt, Ellen Kagabine, Gertrude Kraft, Helen Kraft, Edna Merritt, Hazel Meyer, Nate, Bertha Madison, Mary Morris, Marjorie Pass, Esther Perry, Mary Ross, Mildred Roselle, Bertha Swanson, Clark Twin, Alfred Weatherby, Pearl Weatherby, Dorothy Webster, Kelsey Webster, Lucille Weaver, Dorothy Bush, Maud Barber, Arthur Byers, Renee Parker, Morley Bishop, Sarah Brown, John Betzold, Winifred Betzold, Irma Eckerson, Irma Klein, Mildred Maley, Esther Wren. That's it. Those were the original charter members. Now I will read the ones that are still here, and a lot of them are here tonight. Ethel Bishop, Margaret Blackmore isn't here. Ellsworth Brown, Grace Byers, Esther Dye is, where does she live? Maryland? Okay, Carolina. Helen Cross is out of town. Marjorie Pass is here. Esther Perry, Mildred Roselle, Dorothy Webster, who has had a mishap, so she couldn't be with us tonight, and myself. And we have this lovely, where are they? Over here.
On the windowsill.
We have these lovely, you want to bring them over to me, John? I got to do everything.
Sure you do, Lucille.
All right, put this on the counter. Esther Dye. And, all right, you might as well be the Rochester. Give these to Grace Byers. Ethel Bishop here too. Ethel Bishop. And this will go on the counter. Margaret Black.
it's fun to see, where everybody is.
Oh,
Right on the side.
Yeah, I tell them.
King.
All over the wire, that's me.
I'll just read this one so you all know, in case you never see it again. The Newstead Historical Society honors Helen Pratt as a charter member of the society, now celebrating 35 years of dedication and service to the community. Thanks.
You gotta use it right up close to your mouth.
The Newstead Historical Society honors Helen Pratt as a charter member of the society, now celebrating 35 years of dedication and service to the community. July 22nd, 19